Welcome to the mailbag section. We'll get right into it. This comes from Special Shoutouts, one of my favorites on Twitter, who is John Galt. What are your thoughts about leaving salary on the table? So it's a great question. I think it varies for a sport like basketball. I like to set a minimum salary on DraftKings of $49,000 of the $50,000. Other sports, I don't set a salary minimum. On a main slate, it's going to most of the time it's going to crunch pretty close to. It's not going to leave that much salary on the table. But on some of the smaller slates, it's not uncommon for me to have 2,000, 3,000 left on the table because I would rather get exposure to the stacks that I want to get exposure to over making sure the salary fits perfectly. And that's the other thing too is most people that are like building by hand or whatever, or even on the optimizer setting a minimum salary, it'll give you an opportunity to be different if you don't set a minimum salary. But that's a great question. So next question comes from Chad. I have a question. When I play the Minimax, I'm more of a play all the guys type of player and hope that I get a combo that spikes. I know you focus in on some teams more than me and play all the guys. Doesn't seem to work well in the 20 max. So tonight I'm playing the mini max the normal way, building my 150 with some focus. My question is, do you try and get everyone in a batter's lineup, or you just let the projections tell you who you like to play the teams? Another great question. So one thing that you could do is when you've worked your way up to the mini max is you could do the hitting for average strategy where you spread it out over a handful of teams and an additional handful of minor stacks to just try to get that perfect combo that can take you all the way up to the first. And then, in some of the dime times or the winner take alls, you might look at getting concentrated and heavy on a couple teams and just experiment. Figure out what you like best, but I have no issue with using both hitting for average and hitting for power within the same build to attack two type of contests differently. That's a great question. That's an advanced way to go as you guys get more comfortable in building and being able to put together a handful of lineups for lock and being comfortable with that. That's definitely a great way to go to get some diversification. And again, we want to spread out our risk as best as possible. And so that's definitely a way to do it. What do you do when you're getting 70% of a hitter in your lineup? I'm assuming you're talking about hitter caps. No, I don't cap hitters. I trust the projections. I just can't tell you guys how many times I've been like, you know what, that's too much. I'm not going to do that. And then a guy goes absolutely nuts. The other night, the guy for the Orioles was just showing up in my build, I think, at a 70% clip. And I'm like, I don't know, man. The Orioles aren't that great. But I left it because I just know better. Too many times, I've been wrong about what's going on with, my gut misleading me, and I left it in. The guy had 30 points. So I don't have any problem with going all in on a hitter, having a lot of a hitter. But if it's something that you're uncomfortable with, by all means, cap it if that's too much for you. What would you do if you could only play in 20 lineups a night? I'd go all in on one team. Sorry about that. My dog was having some issues. I'd go all in on one team. He was caught in the corner and he couldn't get up, so I had to nudge him. I would go all in on one team. Really try to, if I can't take this thing down, maybe they can score 7-8 runs, and I can cash multiple entries. The Pirates went off the other night, and I didn't have any of them in my crunch. Should I increase their projections? I mean, you can. That's a way to get more Pirates, but I don't think you should look at it from a 2020 hindsight perspective because you're always going to regret it. If you like the Pirates, go back to the video where we build by hand and you can see, hey, if I like the Pirates, I'm going to select the Pirates to ensure that I get the Pirates. And don't have any regrets, man. No regrets. Like the one movie with Jason Sudeikis and Jennifer Aniston. No regrets. I'm too lazy to look that up. How many stacks you typically use on a slate? Is fewer better? I think this goes hand in hand with the question that we just answered for Chad, is what do you want to do? If you want to go all in on a team, you can do that. Your ceiling is going to be a little bit higher, the bulk of your build, but your risk is going to be a lot greater. You may not have the perfect combo to win a tournament, but if the team scores a lot of runs, you're going to cash a lot of entries. If they don't score any runs, you're not going to cash a lot of entries. If you're really trying to win a tournament like the mini-max, or you don't have a very high risk tolerance, then you'll want to spread it out. The fewer teams you build or stack, the higher risk you're going to have. So it comes back to your risk tolerance. What do we do about teams that use an opener like the Rays? So that's a great question, because if there's clarity of who's coming in right away, I don't have any problem with that. So like we'll see this with this just happened yesterday. We'll see with like the Angels. They'll have I forget the dude's name. He'll come in, he'll pitch the first inning, and then Pena will come in, and Pena does fine. But a team like the Rays, it was actually a really sneaky move last year to find out who the opener was, and then be on the quote unquote long reliever, starter, whatever you want to call him, the second guy in. Their salaries would be cheap, and you could get close to starter points with them. But this year the Rays have been more secretive with their second guy in, and it's burned me twice already. So my first response would be, it depends on how many pitchers are on the slate. So on a slate like tonight, there's 14 games. I'm just Xing them out. Even though I told you guys don't X anybody out of your player pool, I think you can make a special consideration. It's past 9 o'clock. It's the loopiness it's in. Yeah, you can make an exception. That's the word I was looking for. You can make an exception by just Xing them out. Like, dude, there's 28 different pitchers to pick from. Don't even mess with this. Don't even get cute, because if Beeks isn't coming in for Stanek or Wood, and it's one of the other guys like Churros, or however you say his name, you're just going to take a 0, and that's no fun, man. But that'll wrap it up for the mailbag. That'll wrap it up for this video segment. Thank you again for stopping by. If you guys have any other things you want to see covered in next week's mailbag, please hit me up. Thank you guys for tuning in. God bless, and I will see you guys on the Twitter and back at it next week. Talk to you then.